Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the class. We are doing the chapter Weavers, Iron Smelters, and Factory Owners. And under this chapter, we have done about the Indian textile and its demand in the world market. And we have seen that there were various types of Indian textile, like this chains, then muslin, then bandana. All these different names were given to the Indian textile, and we find that it was very much in demand in European market. But at the same time, some problems started to arose in this when the cloth manufacturer of Britain they started uh, protest against the import of Indian textile because they wanted to ban the import of Indian cotton textile in Britain, and subsequently this Calico Act was passed in 1720. Then one more setback was there to Indian textile. Uh, that was the use of machines in Britain and the textile industry, like spinning jenny was there, then steam engine started to be used, and because of these the quantity of textile production increased at a very large scale. And we find that european in Europe and other countries, other continents like Africa and America, the demand for Indian clothes started to decline by the beginning of 19th century. है ना? By the beginning of 19th century, it happened that Indian-made cotton textile successfully outstayed Indian goods from their traditional market in Africa, America, and Europe. So, this was the decline of Indian textile, and with the decline of Indian textile, the weavers started to the problems of the weavers started to uh, rise, because now they were not getting any orders from the East India Company, nor they were getting any advance. So their condition was becoming bad. But this was not the end, because we find that what happened by the 1830s, that the British cotton cloth started to flood Indian market, and because of which there was lesser demand for Indian clothes in Indian market itself. However, some items were there which were always which can be provided only by the Indian handloom weaving, and this was like sari, in which we find intricate borders, then clothes with traditional woven patterns. These can only be produced by handloom weaving. So these were not affected. These got not affected by the British cloth in the Indian market. Okay, and now we find that cotton mills started to come up in India also. Like the first spinning mill was set up in Bombay in 1854, and then we find that there were so many mills started operating in Bombay. By 1900, we have one data. By 1900, over 84 mills started operating in Bombay. Okay, and other than Bombay, there were other cities also where the cotton mills started to come up. That was Ahmedabad. It was the first cotton mill in Ahmedabad, was started in 1861, and then it was established in Kanpur also in 1862. So, in this way, we find that the textile factory industry in India uh, emerged, but it was facing many problems also, because the textile which were produced in India, they were getting competition from the British textile, which were imported from the Britain. And as the government was uh, not our government, it was a colonial government, and that is why the demand of the Indian textile producers that there should be increased import duty on the cotton textile which is getting imported from Britain. It was not fulfilled, and that is the reason that the Indian cloth has to face stiff competition from the British cloth in Indian market. But at the time of this First World War, we find that the cotton factory uh, production in India increased a lot. It was benefited by the First World War because during the First World War, the textile imports from Britain was declined. And the next thing is that the Indian factories were also called upon to produce clothes for military supply. So, because of these two reasons, we can say that the First World War actually benefited the Indian cotton industry. Okay, and now we are doing the sword of Tipu Sultan and steel, as we have discussed in the previous class that Tipu Sultan, who was the ruler of Mysore, his sword was very much famous, and he was very much famous for his bravery. And he fought four wars with the British, and lastly, in the War of 1799, he died fighting with his sword in his hand. So his legendary sword is really very valuable, and at present it is kept in the museum in England. But here you must understand that what was special about the sword of Tipu Sultan. So what we find that the sword of Tipu Sultan was very hard, and the edges were very sharp. And the edges were so sharp that they can easily rip through the opponent's armor. जो opponents थे उनका जो armor होता है कवच, उसको भी वो चीर सकता था, इतना उसके एज जो है वो शार्प होते थे. ओके. एंड वी फाइंड दैट ऐसे जो swords बन रहे थे वो कैसे बन पा रहे थे. ऐसे तो सभी सूट नहीं होते, कुछ ही इतने स्पेशल होते हैं. तो ऐसे शूट्स कैसे बन पा रहे थे? एक बहुत ही स्पेशल टाइप का हाई कार्बन स्टील होता था, जिसको वुड्स कहा जाता था, है ना? हाई कार्बन स्टील. इसी हाई कार्बन स्टील से ये सोर्ड्स बनते थे, जिसकी वजह से उनका ये जो एज होता था वो बहुत ही शार्प होता था, और बहुत ही हार्ड होता था. ठीक है. और ये जो डिफरेंट काइंड ऑफ आयरन की बात हो रही है, हाई कार्बन स्टील, उसको हम वुड्स कहते हैं. और ये वुड्स जो है वो पूरी साउथ इंडिया में इसको प्रोड्यूस किया जाता था, है ना? और जब वुड्स स्टील को सोड बनाने के लिए यूज किया जाता था, तो उसके साथ ही साथ एक और चीज आती थी जो कि मैंने कल बताया था, फ्लोइंग वाटर पैटर्न. वो स्टिफ नहीं होता था. ठीक है. द सोड वाज नॉट stiff. It was like flowing like water. That was possible only because of woods, as it was made from high carbon steel, that is woods. That is why it was possible to the sword to flow like water pattern, है ना? और जो बहुत छोटे छोटे कार्बन क्रिस्टल्स आयरन में थे, उसी वजह से ये फ्लोइंग वाटर पैटर्न जो है वो आता था सोड में. ओके. एंड नाउ वी विल सी about Francis Buchanan. Was an English, we can say, tourist, and he toured through Mysore in 1800, a year after Tipu Sultan's death. ठीक है। टीपू सुल्तान जो है उन्होंने 4 टाइम्स वॉर किया इसके साथ, ब्रिटिश के साथ। और इसमें लास्ट में जो 1799 का वॉर था उसमें टीपू सुल्तान was died while fighting against the ब्रिटिश। और यहाँ पर हम देख रहे हैं कि फ्रांसिस बुचैनन जो है वो मैसूर आए थे 1800 ईयर में, यानी कि 1799 में जब टीपू का डेथ हो जाता है उसके 1 साल बाद, है ना। एंड बुचैनन जो है उन्होंने इस बात की काफी खोज की कि ये वुड्स स्टील जो है वो किस तरह से बनता है। और उन्होंने जो अकाउंट लिखा, सारी जो ट्रैवलर्स होते थे ना, उनका एक बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट काम होता है अपनी डायरी लिखना। डायरी में उन सब चीजों को लिखना जो कुछ भी उन्होंने देखा, एक्सपीरियंस किया किसी भी कंट्री में जाके। तो बुचैनन ने भी इस तरह का अकाउंट लिखा है जिसमें वो बता रहे हैं कि इस तरह के जो स्मेल्टिंग होते थे वो कैसे होते थे। ठीक है। ओके। तो अगर हम देखिए फर्नेसेस जो होते हैं, फर्नेसेस क्या होता है? फर्नेस जो होता है जिसको हम कहते हैं जहाँ बहुत बड़ी जिसको जैसे हमारे घर में गैस चूल्हा होता है, गैस स्टोव होता है जिसपे हम खाना बनाते हैं, तो उसी तरह का गैस चूल्हा ही है वो भट्टी। दिस इज कॉल्ड भट्टी, है ना। फर्नेस का होता है हिंदी भट्टी। तो वो गैस चूल्हा ही है लेकिन बहुत बड़ा सा है। ठीक है। अब कैसे ये बनता था? तो ये जो गैस चूल्हा है बड़ा सा, उसमें क्या किया जाता था कि आयरन को चारकोल के साथ मिक्स किया जाता था। ठीक है। आयरन आयरन वाज मिक्स्ड विथ चारकोल। एंड उसके बाद उसको छोटे छोटे जो क्ले के पॉट्स होते थे उसके उसमें डाल दिया जाता था। ठीक है। So, what we find that when this smelting was done, there was an intricate control of temperature. And because of this intricate control of temperature, the smelters were able to produce steel ingots that were used for sword making. And it was done not in India but in West and Central Asia also. ये जो वुड्स बनाने का जो तरीका देख रहे स्मेल्टिंग हो रही है जिसमें कि कार्बन को चारकोल को मिक्स कर दिया जा रहा है आयरन के साथ। और तो ये सिर्फ इंडिया की नहीं बल्कि वेस्ट और सेंट्रल एशिया में भी ये चीजें होती थी। ठीक है। और यहाँ पर हम यही देखते हैं कि वुड्स जिस जो नाम दिया जा रहा है इस तरह के इस प्रोसेस से जो आयरन प्रोड्यूस होता था उसको नाम क्या दिया गया है? वुड्स। एंड ये जो वुड्स है वो एंग्लिसाइज्ड वर्जन है। ये दिस इज इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर यू। दिस वुड्स इज एन एंग्लिसाइज्ड version एंग्लिसाइड वर्जन ऑफ द कन्नड़ वर्ड उक्कू। कन्नड़ वर्ड है उक्कू, उसी का एंग्लिसाइज्ड मतलब जो इंग्लिश पीपल ने उसको चेंज कर दिया। ठीक है। उक्कू को उन्होंने वुड्स बना दिया। इसमें आपको कुछ और भी नाम है जो याद करना होगा। तेलुगु में इसी को कहा जाता था हुक्कू। उक्कू इन कर्नाटक कन्नड़ कर्नाटका में, और तेलुगु में इसको बोला जाता था हुक्कू, और तमिल और मलयालम में इसको बोला जाता था उरुक्कू। ठीक है। सो these were the names given to this high carbon steel which was called woods. And this Indian woods, actually we can say that they fascinated European scientists. They were very much perturbed, shocked to see that this Indian woods steel is so important, is so strong, है ना? So we find that uh, there was a scientist, Michael Faraday, in Britain. This scientist was there, Michael Faraday. Uh, he discovered of electricity and electromagnetism. इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का इन्वेंशन करने वाले कौन है? ये माइकल फाराडे ही है। नेक्स्ट इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिज्म भी माइकल फाराडे ने ही स्टार्ट किया। तो ये जो फाराडे थे, ही स्पेंट 4 years स्टडिंग द प्रॉपर्टीज ऑफ इंडियन वुड्स। जो इंडियन वुड्स हैं उसकी क्या प्रॉपर्टीज है, बिकॉज ही वाज अ साइंटिस्ट। So his it is under his area of interest that how the Indian boots was made, what were the properties of Indian boots. So for that purpose only, he spent 4 years studying the properties of boots. And this we see that this boots steel making process was widely known in South India, and it was completely lost by the mid 19th century. Some incidents were occurred, because of which we find that this woods steel making process was completely lost by mid 19th century. Okay, so now
So we will see the reason behind this loss of this wood steel production in India. The main reason was that the British, because of the conquest of India by the British, we find that they started import of iron and steel from England, and this import of iron and steel from England displaced the iron and steel produced by uh, the people in India. So now there was no need of this wood steel, because steel was coming from England, and subsequently we find that the swords and armor making industry died. Okay, and now we see what happened to the villages where this woods, uh, woods iron was produced, and what happened to the people, to the smelters communities who were engaged in this activity. Okay, so we see that in India, this iron smelting was a very common process till the end of 19th century, and it was a very commonly it was produced like Bihar, central India, particularly in these two regions. If we see that every district had smelters, and these smelters, they used local deposits of ore in order to produce iron. Okay, and this iron was used for the manufacturing of different types of tools and implements and armor. And in this, we see that the furnace was very important in the process of smelting, and these furnace were most often built of clay and sun dried bricks. Okay, and just like in case of weaving and spinning, we have seen that uh, how the work was divided between male and female. In the similar way, the smelting was also done by men, and the women used to work in the bellows. bellows क्या होते हैं? बेलोज जो होते हैं उससे एयर पंप किया जाता है फर्नेस में, जिससे क्या होता है कि ऑक्सीजन मिलता है, और ऑक्सीजन जो है उसके कारण क्या होता है कि फर्नेस जो है उसमें उसको किसी भी फायर के बर्न करने के लिए ऑक्सीजन की ज़रूरत होती है, तो वो ऑक्सीजन बेलोज से मिलते हैं। बेलोज जैसे उसके ऊपर ये आप फोटो आप देख सकते हैं, यू कैन सी दिस। यहाँ पर जो है ये बेलोज है जिसको पंप किया जा रहा है, ये खड़े होकर के इसको पंप कर रहे हैं। यू कैन सी ये दीज आर द बेलोज, खड़े होके इसको पंप कर रहे हैं, और इससे जो एयर है वो जा रहा है, और फर्नेस जो है वो उसमें टेम्परेचर उसका बढ़ रहा है, फायर जो है वो कंटिन्यू कर रहा है। ठीक है, तो बेलोज को चलाने का काम जो है वो वुमेन करती थी, और स्मेल्टिंग जो है वो मेन करते थे। ठीक है, और इस तरह से चारकोल जो है वो बर्न होता रहता था पर डे। Okay, just look at this picture. This is a village in central India, and in this village, Agarias lived. Who were Agarias? Agarias were a community of iron smelters. ठीक है, आयरन स्मेल्टर्स की कम्युनिटी थी जो स्मेल्टिंग का काम करती थी। उनका नाम है अगारियाज, और who lived in central India. ठीक है, and they were very much specialized in the craft of iron smelting. And we see that like first of all, though, because of import of iron and steel, the demand for wood steel became very low, because of which these community of iron smelters were affected badly. And one more happening was there, like in the late 19th century, a series of famines occurred, because of which what happened that the people in the village were affected very badly. And if we see in central India, uh, these agarias, they stopped iron smelting. They left the village, they deserted the village, and migrated from village to another place. Now they were looking for some other work to survive, है ना? And a large number of them never worked their furnace again. जो furnace था उसको पूरी तरह से छोड़ दिया गया। वुड्स आयरन के प्रोडक्शन का काम पूरी तरह से खत्म हो जाए। ठीक है, एंड लेट 19th सेंचुरी आते आते हम देखते हैं कि जो आयरन स्मेल्टिंग का काम था वो पूरी तरह से कम होता जा रहा है, डिक्लाइन होता जा रहा है। और मोस्ट ऑफ द विलेजेस में जो फर्नेसेस थे वो अब यूज़ में नहीं आ रहे हैं, उनको अबैंडन कर दिया गया, डेजर्ट कर दिया गया, छोड़ दिया गया। और जो आयरन प्रोड्यूस हो रहा था उसकी भी अ, जो अमाउंट था वो कम हो गया, है ना? सब कुछ कम होता जा रहा है। सो इसके पीछे क्या रीजंस थे? रीजंस तो एक हमने देख लिया है कि ब्रिटिश रूल जो है, ब्रिटिश आ गए थे इंडिया में, और आयरन एंड स्टील का जो डिमांड था इंडिया के अंदर, उस डिमांड को ब्रिटेन से आयरन एंड स्टील इंपोर्ट करके पूरा किया जा रहा है ना? Other than this, there were some other reasons also. Like first reason, we can see why these furnaces fell into disuse. Disuse means they were not in use anymore. Why the amount of iron produced came down? So the first reason we can say, जो हमने अभी कहा, ब्रिटिश का आना। अ, उसके अलावे जो और रीजंस थे, लाइक न्यू फॉरेस्ट लॉ जो थे, these new forest law were made by the British, as we have seen in that chapter, tribals, Tikus, and a vision of a mm, गोल्डन एज। उसको हमने देखा था, उसमें किस तरह से जो ब्रिटिश थे अब इंडिया के फॉरेस्ट रिसोर्सेज को भी यूज़ करना चाहते थे, एंड फॉर दैट पर्पस दे हैव classified forest in different categories. Like one of the category of the forest was reserved forest, है ना? In this reserved forest, people were prevented from entering. They cannot enter this reserve forest. So now the iron smelters were also facing problem, because they needed wood for charcoal, and now they were not allowed to enter the reserve forest. So how, from where they will get this wood? And in the absence of wood, they could not do the work of smelting. Not only this, they were not also able to get iron ore, because iron ore was also present in the forest areas also. So they were not supposed to enter the forest, so they were not getting. wood for charcoal. They were not getting iron ore, and now they have to. If if they defied forest law, defy matlab नहीं मानना. If they did not obey the forest laws, then they entered the forest secretly, है ना, चोरी से चुपके से they can enter the forest and collected wood, है ना. बट दे कुड नॉट सस्टेन ना इन दिस वे. कितने दिनों तक इस तरह से सिक्रेटली वो चोरी से घुस करके अपना वुड कलेक्ट करें और आयरन और कलेक्ट करके काम करें. दैट वाज नॉट पॉसिबल. कभी कभी ये हो सकता है, बट ऑन अ रेगुलर बेसिस ये कि सिक्रेटली हम चले जाएं और काम कर लें, दैट वाज नॉट पॉसिबल. So, what happened that so many smelters they gave up their craft, because it was not now possible. It was now not possible for them to continue this craft, and they started looking for other means of livelihood. Okay, and now we find that in some areas uh, the government granted access to the forest. Means the government said yes, you can enter the forest, है ना. But if they enter the forest, they had to pay a tax to the forest department. Okay, so this also, if they have to give tax to the forest department for the use of wood, then it will reduce their income, obviously, है ना. एक तो उनको ठीक है जाने के लिए मिल रहा है, लेकिन जाने के बदले में उन्हें टैक्स अगर देना पड़ रहा है, तो फिर उनका जो प्रॉफिट का मार्जिन है वो कम हो जाएगा. तो फिर दे विल नॉट गो, है ना. इस तरह की चीज़ें अगर होंगी तो डिस्करेज होता है इंसान और वो आगे के काम नहीं करता. तो वही हुआ. ठीक है. एंड by late 19th century, we see that the iron and steel was being imported from Britain. ठीक है. जो कि मैंने पहला रीजन आपको बताया था, जो कि यहाँ पे दिया हुआ थर्ड रीजन में. और जो आयरन स्मिथ्स थे इंडिया में, दे स्टार्टेड यूजिंग द इम्पोर्टेड आयरन in order to manufacture the implements, tools, armor, utensils, है ना. So all these actually lowered the demand for iron produced by local smelters. And you see that by the early 20th century, the artisans who produced iron and steel, they faced a new competition, and this competition was from the British. Okay.